Welcome back to the Wrong Advice Podcast. I'm your host, John Picciuto, and I'm extremely excited to have my very good friend, the one and only John Baab, on the line with us today. Johnny, how you doing, my friend?
What's up, Johnny? Thanks for having me on, brother. Appreciate you.
No problem. Super excited to have you on the pod finally. I know we've been trying to do this for a while. Why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hello, listeners. My name is John Baab. I am a guitar player for the band Ghost Hounds, and I've known John a long time. He's a good guy. That's all I got for you.
So John and I have known each other for 20-something years. We went to high school together. I was a little bit older, but we kind of ran into each other playing sports and stuff. And then many moons after high school, I elicited the tutelage of Mr. Baab to teach me how to play the guitar. So we can consider him my mentor in the guitar world. And I mean, suffice to say, Johnny is world class. Me, Mr. Picciuto, I think I'm still somewhere around first grade or second grade level playing at this point, but it's something I love to do. But my first question for you, Johnny, is when did you first pick up a guitar?
I picked up a guitar for the first time when I was about 8 years old. I'd been playing other instruments from an even earlier age. And when I was in like fourth or fifth grade, I guess I was like 7 or 8, so maybe like third or fourth grade. I used to play in the orchestra where I grew up in Brooklyn, and they got this instrument called the mandolin through a grant by VH1 Save the Music program.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was a sort of a more rare instrument to see in like an elementary school orchestra. You have violin, cello, that kind of thing. And I just thought it looked really cool. You could plug it in and electrify it, and I was like, yeah, I want to do that thing. So I went, I actually got selected to play in the Brooklyn Borough-wide Orchestra, and we performed at Carnegie Hall. And my dad was watching me just like, because when you're a kid, you don't really think twice about what you're doing. You just do it, and you don't realize that it's like pretty impressive. So he was like, man, I got to get this kid a guitar. And I got it when I was 8 years old, and I have not played mandolin ever since.
That's awesome. That's funny. I've known you for a very long time. We talk all the time, and I didn't know we both had it in common that we've both performed at Carnegie Hall. How hilarious is that?
Yeah, man.
It's pretty awesome.
But only the real ones, bro. And your name has to be John, too.
Yeah, right. There's a very fine barrier to entry. I feel like obviously you are doing what every kid's dream is to do when you pick up an instrument, whether it's a guitar, a piano, whatever it might be, that you've like kind of led your passion and your love into your career. What does it feel like to kind of be able to do the thing that you love most for a living?
It's really a privilege and an honor. I mean, I know that it's not lost on me that, a lot of people would trade spots with me and sort of, want to do what I do. What I will say is that there's definitely a stream crossing in between, like, work and play where, I don't mean to sound ungrateful here, but at the end of the day, every job is a job, but
Sure.
Being that, I know people say if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and those people are fucking lying. But I mean, it's work that I enjoy doing, and obviously it's also not lost on me that I'm extremely lucky and privileged, and even amongst other professional musicians I know, and I think I have these moments where I kind of stop and look around because everything's moves so fast, where I kind of stop and look around and go like, whoa, what would like 8-year-old John think about this? Because he didn't even think this was possible, you know what I mean? So that is a cool feeling for sure.
That's awesome. I mean, obviously you have a distinct passion for the thing that you do. And yeah, I mean, there's no question that at some point, everything that is great is also still work, right? There's touring, there's traveling, there's so many hours put into this thing that, at some point everything does feel like heavy, right? But still, yeah, for sure. One of my biggest questions is like, so I took this, kind of like a very blasé kind of approach to learning how to play the guitar, and I felt like you have a really cool way of being able to be relatable in your gift in when you're like presenting it to like someone that you're teaching. And one thing that I always was curious about is like, obviously you've been playing for such a long period of time. It's not like something that you necessarily could just pick up and bam, I could play the guitar. So is there ever a point like from 8 years on to like 18 or like whenever it clicked for you that like this is something that I can do better than like most people I know?
Oh, I think maybe when I was in, middle school or like junior high school, I felt that way just because not a lot of people could do it. But in a more like serious, like, oh, like I could actually maybe pursue this professionally or something like that, I would say probably like, I think when I was in college, I was, I played baseball and I got injured and, I was in a sling and all I could really do was play guitar. And I think that was probably the period where I made the biggest, jump in skill level. And then, I mean, dude, we all deal with imposter syndrome. So like, there's like, coming to the realization that you're not just, thinking that you're the best. Like, it's not an unfair assessment anymore once you start hearing from enough people like, oh, dude, you're really good, because you don't believe it at first.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, like you're like, oh yeah, I kind of surprised myself on that one, So definitely like sometime in college, and then I mean, I think it keeps happening in waves because every time you step up to the next level, you kind of restart, kind of on the bottom again. Mm-hmm. So now I have imposter syndrome again because I'm like looking around at people that I grew up listening to, and I'm just like, what the fuck.
Yeah, I'm super glad you brought up imposter syndrome because it's something that I've discussed with like a multitude of people on my podcast, whether it's photographers or actors or whomever it might be, because it's something that I struggle with a lot because I feel like it took a much later period of my life for me to find the thing that I love, like photography. And then it's always this thing where you're like, well, I don't know if I could shoot for this brand or with this model or feel like I could produce work at a level that is up to my, my mentor and people who I look up to. So I'm super glad you brought that up because you have an undeniable skill in the thing that you do for a living, and you're, borderline at the top of like the echelon of like where you can go in terms of being like in a major band, touring, like producing work, albums, the whole nine yards. And I think it's such a refreshing thing to hear people who are like killing it at whatever it is that they're doing and being like, oh yeah, like I still have so much self-doubt, so much questions about what I'm doing, because it's just such a relatable thing to hear. Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that never really goes away, and the one way that I've been able to sort of, I don't want to say combat that, but to sort of deal with it is to kind of just let it pass, and instead of letting it cripple me and discourage me, I'll kind of just go, all right, well, we've been through this before, and it turned out you weren't an imposter. So, maybe just listen to, like, if someone tells you something, like compliments you, like, don't dismiss it. Don't be too hard on yourself. And yeah, I think it just comes in waves. And don't get me wrong, there is, playing guitar is so home to me that like when I pick it up, I'm like, oh, right, you got this. But I mean, there's, trying to fall when you're tossing and turning before bed, these kinds of things, I think our mind, when we lead it into the world of comparison, can be a really dangerous place. And I think that's kind of where imposter syndrome stems from, because we're looking around trying to measure ourselves to, hey, this guy is this good and I'm not that good. It's always, it falls into some sort of comparative analysis. And I was lucky enough to learn at the right age that like there's never going to be another Jimi Hendrix, no matter what. Mm-hmm. There's never going to be another Stevie Ray Vaughan. There's never going to be another Eric Clapton. And that also applies to me. So like we all bring something unique to the table in that sense. And for me, I just got into, it's not better or worse, it's just different, And it's also, I'm because music is a super subjective thing. So,
Sure.
like someone could be like, that song sucks. And I'll be like, I like it.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
so
No, no.
I always have that.
I like that because it's just that every time I have these conversations with people, the relatability in imposter syndrome is something that kind of like, oh, take a breath. Okay, you could do this. Like so many people feel this way. So many people go through these questions of self that it's okay to feel that way because it's completely normal. And especially in something like any of the arts, right? Art, photography, music, it is such a subjective landscape that you're going to have people who are like, oh, that's fucking such a sweet picture. And then like my friend will DM me and be like, bro, you took a picture of a parking cone. What the fuck was that? I was like, well, man, like, I don't know. I just did it.
That's just it. You need the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Some things that like I've learned at a young age was to be incredibly comfortable and confident in my skin. And, that could be in like a dating perspective, a work perspective, a hobbies perspective, whatever it might be. What's something that gives you confidence in yourself and like, whether it's your ability to play the guitar, whether it's like anything in life, like what are things like innately in you that gives you confidence?
Ooh, I didn't know I was going to be turned inside out like this, Johnny. I mean, obviously, yeah, guitar. I mean, there's really no other feeling that I can describe that I felt in my life, and that's like playing in front of people and people going crazy, having a good time. Like that's one of the most. That's a feeling that I think most artists chase and will continue to chase that dragon because it's like really like it's like a drug.
Yeah, totally.
But. I mean, dude, aside from that, like, in terms of confidence, I just know that for better or for worse, I'm going to be me. And if someone doesn't like it and they don't want to they don't want to like have me in their life anymore.
I say fuck all the time.
All right. If someone doesn't like me, that's okay. Like, there's a lot of people in the world, there's whatever it is now, 7 billion plus people in the world that, they can go somewhere else. So, I like doing that. And I like to think like at the end of the day, and I know you're a similar way that, I'm a very principle-based person. And so I'm confident in those principles. I know that like if someone needs help, I'm going to help them to the best of my capability. I know I'm a loyal person. I'm an honest person to a fault sometimes, and those are the things that kind of give me confidence to be myself because they're tried and true tested,
Mm-hmm.
They've been put to the test many times and I know I could always fall back on that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially in the world of music, so much of it is, we get to a certain level, really everyone could play,
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's really good in any field. And I think what kind of separates people, from the guys who keep getting the gigs, obviously there is a talent component there, but it's also workability, like, are they cool? Are they prepared? Are they on time? All things that are controllable, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
So all those things melded into one,
Yeah, totally.
one.
I take a lot of like the principles that you mentioned and like they kind of build directly into like one's work ethic, right? Like at the end of the day, like a lot of these common themes and principles that like you and I grew up with as kids in like the same area and like from a similar background, like it just instills a certain level of, I want to do well at whatever it is I'm doing. And if I'm not doing great, I'm still going to do it as right as I possibly can kind of deal. And I think that's certainly like a unique feature from like where we grew up. I think when you do a creative path from a career perspective, it takes a significant work ethic. And, guitar is a thing where every single note, every single chord. It's like a finite amount of information that you can learn. But in terms of like your ability, like that's 100% driven by a work ethic, which I lacked severely in learning to play the guitar. So what do you think is it in yourself? Like when you like finally got to the point where you're fucking around and you're in your your late teens into your 20s, and you're like, I'm good at this and I'm going to spend all my time mastering this?
I think it's definitely a matter of circumstance in that at that age I had a lot of time, like you have a lot more time up until you're, entering, leaving college where you can kind of sit around and like not have to go to work or like whatever it is. And I think that was a huge benefit being, introduced to it early on and having, those years to kind of fumble my way through for a little bit and then get to a certain point and want to keep going and want to keep getting better, you know. But yeah, I just got lucky in terms that I was introduced early enough where I had the hours to just lay into it, you know. And it's something I just love doing, you know. I think part of it too is like, you know, obviously, you know, we had sports when we were kids, but you know, I would go home and like, you know, not like you got a car and stuff like that at that age. So I would sit in my room by myself and listen to records and play guitar, you know, and it was just something that was fun. It helped pass the time, and it, you know, kind of worked out.
Yeah, no, obviously, I appreciate that. I've always found that, like, so it's funny because you kind of segment your life, excuse me, in terms of time, right? So, like, you bust your ass in high school to get a good college, work hard in college to get a good job. You're always like forecasting like your future, right? Like, oh, in 5 years I'll be 25 and I'll be making 100,000 a year, or like when I'm 30, like I'll have a house and a wife and a kid, and like you like always take like these forecasted looks at like what your life's going to be. I would imagine it's hard to have that kind of foresight in a creative career like being a musician. And now that you've reached a point of success that is like completely envious of people in your industry, how do you look at like your future, and especially after like a year like this where everything was completely on pause? Like, do you see yourself like, you know, 3 years from now, boom, we want our second album? Like, you know, I mean, it's like it's an ensemble kind of thing, but like it's very much like what you kind of look out into the future and see. Like, how does that work for like a creative like yourself?
Myself personally, I mean, I'm still taking it day by day. And like you mentioned, you know, last year, you know, we went from, you know, the coolest stuff I've ever done in my career to just the whole world being wiped out. And you know, a year before that, I got hit by a car. So like, it's not really. I think there's been a perspective through that experience, and then also with COVID for a lot of people, like, you know, and you know, oftentimes we get these downloads in a time of a tragedy or something like that, where like, you know, you never really know what's going to happen. And that's especially true with the entertainment industry and music, because, you know, I mean, there's only so much that you can do, and then it's just chance, right? Like, you can do everything right as an artist. You can write great songs, you can play the right shows, and sometimes it might not click. You know, there's not really a textbook or like a
How
you know,
to.
a game. Yeah, exactly. And I think to me, because like, especially like, you know, early 20s, like, you know, gigging in New York City all the time, and you know, you know, it's a struggle out there for young musicians and young artists. And I think I just kind of I got used to living in like a period of uncertainty of like, what's happening in 2 weeks? Who knows? Like I remember one time a girl I was dating, her dad asked me like, "What's your 5-year plan?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't even know what I was like, I don't even know what's happening next week, man. We got to back it up a little bit, you know." So I've just kind of gotten used to that sort of flow, and I think too it at first probably made me a little anxious and on edge, but you just kind of get used to it, you know.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I'm glad you brought up the accident, because that kind of fell right in between, you know, when we were working together in terms of you teaching me how to play guitar. And I just remember, like, first of all, like, thank God you were all right. Like, it was an absolute insane situation. But coming back from, you know, I think you broke some ribs, you broke your arm, you broke your shoulder, like you broke a whole bunch of shit. And like that impacts your ability to do the thing you do for a living. What was that like, like I remember vividly what that experience was like for me, because like we were pretty tight then, and you know, we were talking multiple times a week. And I remember coming to your you know, first return gig at what was that place called?
Rockwood Music Hall.
Rockwood, yeah. And I remember being there, and those are some of my favorite photos that I've ever taken, because it was like simultaneously like, well, I don't have like this new hobby that I'm doing guitar because my guitar teacher got hit by a car, so I picked up photography. It's like, it's one of those really funny like serendipitous things for me, obviously not getting hit by a car for you, but like, talk to me, like that was like a crazy period of your life, and I would imagine there's like a lot of like uncertainty and questions. Like what was that like for you, you know, when that happened?
Well, first I'd like to say I really like those pictures that you took as well, and
Thanks.
Sorry for my hiatus on the teaching part. uh, it was a both a terrifying and really formative experience, and I mean, I'm sure anyone could probably surmise that. But the reason for that is one, like you mentioned, there was when I was about to get surgery, I kind of got prefaced before I went into the room from the doctors. It's like, listen, dude, we're gonna, do our best to like put your arm back together, but like, you know, who knows? Like, you might have nerve damage. Like, we don't know yet, and we don't know what that's gonna look like in terms of like the scope of your recovery for some time, But the best advice I can give you is just to like work really hard in physical therapy right away, and that will improve the chances. And I did. I worked really, really hard, and it was a really painful, physically painful experience. But in my mind, I was just like, dude, you've come this far. Like, if you like cop out right here, and then you're not able to ever play guitar again, like you'll never be able to live with yourself. And the other experience I had, it was kind of like a realization I had, which was just like, well, if John the guitar player can't play guitar anymore, like what's left over?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a hard time answering that at first, because I think I was like 27 or 28 years old, and pretty much since I dropped out of college, all I was doing was playing guitar. Like that was my life revolved around it, and that's everything I did. I didn't work a day job. I just like that's all I did. So I was kind of freaking out, and then what I realized was that it sounds really silly to me, and I don't mean to take away from anyone by saying this, but it sounds really silly to me to say I was put on this planet to take this instrument made of wood and metal steel strings on it, and that's why I was put here, was to play that. Right? That it within itself just it sounds like pretty vain to me. And what I realized was that, like, my purpose on this planet wasn't to play music. My purpose on this planet, that was just my vessel to get to my purpose, which I think is more in the sense of, having this shared experience with whether it's an audience or a listener, that you kind of just go, hey, we're all in this together kind of thing, and having that sort of that feedback loop of, hey, let's feel good and let's do the right thing, and I realized that music was just my medium to accomplish that. So I kind of made peace with it, and I said, listen, man, try as hard as you can, and if you can't, after it's all said and done, like you keep your chin up, because you did everything you could, and you'll find another medium to keep doing what you love doing, which is really just interacting with people and trying to make the world a better place slowly.
Dude, I really love that perspective. I think that's huge. 'Cause like, I'm in my mid 30s, and I think it's taken me such a long period of time for me to like find the thing that I think I'm supposed to be doing. And like, it's a freeing feeling to like kind of be like in a position where I finally feel like, wow, I found the thing that I fucking love, that sets my soul on fire. I never once considered the possibility that it could be taken away from me. And I think that's like a hugely, hugely important kind of perspective, because in an event where you can't do the thing you love anymore, that kind of recognition of being able to kind of like take it a different avenue is like, that's pretty good, man. I like that a lot. Yeah, I like that.
Man, yeah. I mean, it's a learning experience I think everyone eventually goes through, because you've seen like people who have owned businesses for 40 years, them, the industry change and them tank and they lose everything, but then they just start, it's like a phoenix and rising from the ashes, and I think resilience is a really important character quality that not that it gets overlooked, but I know a lot of people who have reinvented themselves, or like started a new career at 40 or whatever it is, and it's hard, but it's not impossible,
Mm-hmm.
And I think we always have a choice in what we want to participate in, and I try to stay away from the self-pity one.
True that, man. We have that conversation a lot, especially like, mid-pandemic when I came out to Pittsburgh, and we had a good opportunity to spend a couple nights together, just, drinking some Johnny and having some good chats. we kind of have different paths than like a lot of people that we've grown up with, right? You're in a fucking band. I'm doing my own thing. You find it like difficult to relate to people that you've known since you were a kid. Like we're in completely different places. Like a lot of people that you grew up with are probably married. They got kids. They're doing different things. Like, do you find like the connections that you have with like some of your younger friends are like kind of, they're not there anymore. They've just taken on like a different kind of shell, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, neither of us are the same person that we were back then. That's
true that.
And I also, I kind of stay in touch with people here and there, but and yeah, the relationships are still there. It's like, yeah, this is my buddy that we used to play ball together, and so yeah, every time you hang out, you kind of go back, but I don't necessarily feel like. I mean, I've gone through the phase where I'm like, yeah, I feel like an alien because like everyone's like talking about their 401k, and I'm like, how am I paying rent next month? Because I'm like just trying to play guitar for a living. But like I said earlier, I really try to stay away from the cycle of comparison because I again, not better or worse, just different. I do think that there are. I do think I've been on the receiving end of a lot of judgment throughout the years from people that don't really understand what I do or what it entails. And even something as simple as like, and this still happens to me. And like, it used to bother me, but now I just like, I mean, not really anything bothers me anymore at this point, but I don't take it personally, but even now, like people be like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I play guitar. And they're like, cool, what's your day job? And I'm like,
I play guitar.
What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm an accountant. Cool. What's your day job? You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing? And like I said, I used to get offended by that, but I think what I've realized is that as much as people want to think they know, we can't fully fathom any reality until we're smack in the middle of it, so I don't know what it's like to be an accountant until I'm an accountant,
I like that. I like also the perception of comparison thing because we live in this hyper fake, sensationalized Instagram world where everyone's really only sharing their highlight reel, right? So it's like no one's ever talking about, like I had a nice conversation with a girlfriend of mine that I've known for a long time. And she's like, I always post about like my dog or like my kids, like, that she's a teacher and like, all these like pleasant things. And like, I never talk about how like on Monday, I was completely unable to get out of bed. And there's this like barrier to like our social media lives and our real lives that for some reason a lot of people don't cross, and it's something that I would love to see happen more because there's so much relatability in this shared life experience that we all have that we just don't have the ability to be like, hey, I could really use someone to talk to today, or hey, man, last week really sucked, or you know what I mean? Like people are only showing the highs, like, oh, I'm on a plane, oh, I'm doing this, oh, I'm doing that, and no one like ever takes a second to kind of like say that they're struggling, and that's something that really sucks. And like I'm been so good lately, like in the last 6-7 months of like checking up on my people, like just shooting texts out like, hey, how you doing, how's everything going, because I want to know that my people are doing good, because like at the end of the day, like it's those conversations that you don't have that you ultimately always end up regretting. And I've been stuck in a comparison loop where like you look at like the pictures that you make or the podcasts you produce and you're like, wow, I'm not getting X number of likes or X number of this. It's like, why the fuck does that matter? It doesn't. And I'm going to be trying to steal a lot of that perspective from you for sure.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. And I think I've started seeing a bit more open conversation about that. And I think COVID really, stretched people to their limits, myself included. You're out of work, you're isolated, you can't hug anybody. That's a huge part of like, even a handshake. I remember, bumping elbows with people, everything being so segmented really messed with people. And I think that sort of started forcing the hand to start having the conversation more. But I agree, man. And, I try to only participate in the things that I like to participate in. And for better or for worse, for me lately, that's been like largely not participating in social media outside of like you know, doing stuff for the band, because obviously we're releasing new music and we have to put stuff out. So I handle that stuff, but on a personal level, like I really just try not to participate in it, because I don't really agree with what's going on these days with exactly what you're talking about. And you know, I also, and this is unpopular opinion, but I don't necessarily think everyone deserves a platform. Like, I don't think everyone in the world is that interesting, and I think that's why people are starting to, you know, just
Take a
show
step
highlight.
back. Yeah.
Well, and also people are just sharing their highlights because they want to seem more interesting than they are. When it's like, life isn't even, dude. You have no idea. People, even my own parents, think my life is way more glamorous than it is. You know what I mean? Because like I'll play a cool show in a stadium, and they think my whole life is a series of moments like that. It's not. I still got to come home and scoop my cat's litter box. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, I don't want to ruin that for them. And I realize that I am contributing to that. But now when you put it on a mass level where every single person can have an account on 4 different social media platforms, it starts compounding itself. And this kind of like, it sort of gives everyone the opportunity to be like their own celebrity or like an influencer. Yeah. And really, like, celebrities back in the day, like before social media was huge, you know, they had a degree of mystery to them. You know, you only saw a couple things about their life. You didn't see them with the messy hair when they woke up in the morning, you know. And I think that the medium to access celebrities has changed, but that same sort of share. Now we're going to let you in a little bit, but we're going to only let you this far through the door. So you don't see, like, if you keep opening up the door, there's like a mess behind it. There's like a pile of clothes and that kind of thing. And I think that's really dangerous when you put it on a mass level like that, you know?
I totally agree. I've I've got some young nieces and nephews in my life, so the book Everybody Poops has been a common theme, and it's something that I say all the time, like because inevitably what happens on social media is we take people and we put them on pedestals, and this person is this and this person is that, and at the end of every day, everybody poops, right? Like, every aspect of your life could be great. You've got the Ferrari in the driveway, you've got the multi-million-dollar mansion, but you know what? That guy still shits. You know what I mean? Like, we need to stop pedestaling people and putting them as like this unattainable thing, or like idolizing human beings, because at the end of the day, we're all flawed, normal people.
Dude, absolutely, man. And you know, like, that's, I mean, don't get me wrong. I still have some moments where I meet someone and I'm like, I want to, I don't fanboy. I'll keep it all in here, but on the inside, I'm like
screaming.
Yeah. But that's honestly, that's faded a bit for me. And part of it is, you know, I've gotten to meet some really influential and famous people and athletes and that kind of thing. And after a while, that's sort of like excitement behind it sort of disappears, and it's like, oh, who are you? Oh, cool, you're a major league pitcher. Oh, that's awesome, man, cool. Like, you know, there's not like a pedestal for me anymore. And I think I've experienced sometimes people trying to do that to me, and I'm like, nah, this is not how this works. You know, like, at the end of the day, like, I'm just a human being that fucking plays guitar, and that is, while I think that is a cool thing to do, it's not anything worth being like to act different around me, or it's, you know what I mean? And
yeah, for sure. How much of that do you think comes with age, right? Like, we've both reached an age in life where, like, we've lived enough and like met enough and like done enough to where, like, someone who's of uber fame to me is like, okay, I take that back. I met Bill Murray in an airport and I couldn't fucking speak. I was like, right? Because it's fucking Bill Murray. But like in other scenarios, it's like, I think you reach a certain like age in your life where like everybody is relatable in like some fashion, right? So do you think that's something that ultimately comes with age, or really it just kind of just depends on your like perspective and outlook on something like that?
I think it comes with experience, and sometimes that can correlate with age. But, you know, I mean, last night there's like an open jam, not an open jam. There's this band playing, and they let people come up and jam with them over here locally in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm at right now. And I brought my axe with me, and I went and I played. And these are people like, a lot of the people who are watching, a lot of them have met me before, and they might have heard that I'm in some band or anything like that, and that I shoot pool sometimes or whatever it is, and I'll have even had many conversations with these people. But then I played, and I had a few people come up to me and they were just like, who the fuck are you? And I was like, what do you mean? I know you. What are you talking about? And there's this sort of, I mean, I do think that like playing a musical instrument is a very magical thing. I'm a little bit biased, but
I agree.
I can see people starting to like think and treat me different. And the worst thing for me, and I try to like, I try to be slick about this, but I hate looking up and having fucking 6 cell phones jammed in my face, man.
Yeah.
I really, it's like, man, it sort of pulls
It's
you out of the
alien
moment
from you. Yeah, well, it's also like alienating, right? It's like taking you, like, you said it perfectly, taking you outside of the moment and like putting you beyond it.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
And too, like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think this is maybe a byproduct of everyone having a phone in their pocket that can shoot 4K video these days. And the obsession with capturing memories, like, one thing I really appreciate about you is when you came down and took some shots, you were using film, and you can't just hold down the shutter and take 1,000 photos or constantly like switch out the battery and keep going. Like, you have to pick and choose the moments that you want to capture. You have to have the eye. I remember we were sitting down at when we were sitting at the outdoor spot down there, and you like saw this dog walk by, and you're like, oh, I got to get this, and you caught this amazing shot. But it was like, there are special moments that are worth documenting. And I don't know, it's a subjective thing. Maybe that moment to them was cool. Maybe they're like, hey, this guy's opened up for some big bands. He's doing cool things. This is a moment I want to capture. I don't know. I don't think it's that worthy of a moment, because I'm just like, kind of, I guess, used to just playing guitar the way I play guitar, and I don't really think about it like that. But to answer your original question, I do think it comes with sort of the experience, because I have seen some adults who are older than me kind of, still have that sort of treat you different because of a certain thing, which is, I mean, hey, listen, at the end of the day, all I care about is if you're a nice person or if you're a good person. If you fanboy over someone because it's like, I also think there's different reasons for it, because it's one thing to be like, oh, I didn't know you played guitar like that, so now I'm going to start treating you differently. To me, isn't a great thing, but something like, oh my God, Bill Murray, you like created so many important pieces of work for my life that affected my life. Like, that to me is like a worthy kind of pedestal thing, where it's
Sure.
like, yo, your work speaks for itself, and it was such an integral part of my life that I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe you're actually here, not in a screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's very different. And also, I think the way you approach it too is important, because if you
I approach it like a blubbering idiot. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, but you don't want to be that guy like freaking out.
Yeah.
Because also
they're people.
there's a zoo animal effect in there, so that can be a little funky to navigate.
Absolutely. I think there's no question that like this last year has like been incredibly informative in terms of like me figuring out the person that I am. And like, I feel as if like a lot of people had that opportunity over the last like, kind of 16, 17 months to like really dive into like who they are. And like the people who took the time to like figure out who they are now have like, armed themselves with a mental clarity that some people who kind of turtle shelled over the last year or so don't have. And I'm pretty thankful for that. Obviously you're doing something from a career perspective that is like the thing that dreams are made of, right? Like as a little kid, you dream of being on these incredible venues and stages and playing music, right? So as a 30-something-year-old guitar player in a major band, what do your dreams look like now?
Keep it going. No, I mean, I think, well, first, I just want to comment on what you said about the last year. I think this is an extremely rare opportunity in adult life that kind of reverted back to, for a lot of people, like what it was like to be a teenager. It's like you can't go to work, you can't really go anywhere, you know, like what are you going to do with your free time, you know? And that, for me, I looked at it like, when am I ever going to have like this time to just focus on me, you know? Because when life is moving, like a lot of, like we were talking about earlier, you know, there's a lot of times where you literally just don't have the time to do those things. Like you don't have the time to like play guitar for 10 hours a day like I was able to do when I was younger, you know what I mean? But what, your second question, what was it? What do my dreams look like now?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. You know,
It's a good question because, like, it's something I ask myself quite often because I've been lucky enough to be kind of gifted this ability to do whatever the fuck I want in life. Like, whether that was picking up a camera or a microphone to start a podcast, like, I've just, like, done the thing, right? And now I've kind of reached a point where I'm doing the things that I want to be doing, but I haven't thought about what is next, right? And I'm uniquely situated in my inability to see, like, well, if I can do XYZ, I don't know what XYZ is yet. So I'm curious, for a person who's in a drastically different, albeit much more awesome situation, like, what is that like? You're living your dream, right? You're doing the thing you wanted to do since you were 8 years old. So, like, I'm curious, like, what the horizon's like.
Well, I've just come to accept that I've peaked and I'm going to be chasing this dragon for a long time. No, I'm just kidding, man. You know, it is a great question because, you know, I think that I feel conflicted about dreams, and I'll explain why. Is, you know, when I went through this experience of getting run over by a car, I mean, there's no way to avoid it. It's quite literally thrust upon you that, like, yo, tomorrow might not even be here, you know? And like I said earlier, we all experience loss in different ways in life, but, you know, I really got a new perspective thrust on me, which was really, and it sounds cliche, you know, but it's like really just like live in the moment. And I also believe like we all need goals. We all need something to work towards. Where I've found the most, not solace, but where I get the most pleasure from is, and you know, again, another cliche is like it's about the journey, you know. So for me, I don't necessarily know what the next, like what 5 years from now will look like. I don't really even know what 1 year from now will look like because, you know, we're gearing up to pick up where we left off when COVID hit, and you know, a lot can happen. Especially in the situation that we're in now, we're in a very fortunate situation to be able to kind of, you know, just kind of remove that year and a half and kind of pick up where we left off. I don't know, man. I think my dream is to, and I think I'm doing a decent job of this, but just to be living my life in a way where I know that no matter what road it takes, like what fork in the road comes, that I'm going to be all right. And that comes with tangible things like you know, financial security and like maybe a house someday, or the ability to just go do whatever I want whenever I want. I mean, that's always my goal. That's always been my goal, is like, I just want to be able to like do whatever I want whenever I want. If I want to take a trip to Mexico next week, let's go. You know what I mean? And not just from a money perspective, but just like having control of over my own life. But that's not really a reality all the time. You know, like there's always things that can derail that. So that was a terrible answer to your question.
No, I don't think so at all. I think that's like, I'm in the exact same position. I couldn't possibly agree with you more, because there are so many contributing factors to the things that like my wants, my desires, and my dreams are just so different than where I had anticipated them being, that like I'm in a unique position where I don't know what is next. And it's different because, you know, you have like a different kind of career, job, path, etc. than I, but it's just a genuine curiosity for me because there's so much, you know, left that I still want to do, but I don't necessarily have that one thing, like that one person I want to talk to, that one person I want to photograph. Like there's just so much I want to do, it is, you know, a little bit overwhelming at times. I think one of the luckiest things I got to do was a couple weeks ago is I saw Foo Fighters reopen the Garden, and it was just such a supremely fucking awesome situation. It's a band I love. It was a completely packed venue. It felt like this transcending experience to be back in a venue with a band playing loud music, people singing along, and it just was like like the feeling I kept saying to my sister's fiance who was with me was like, it feels like the world's normal again, and it's like feels like things have healed again. As you guys are gearing up towards going back on the road and being able to perform shows again, what are you feeling like? What's like your level of excitement and nerves and like all of these things that play into like what's going to be like such a fucking rush of an experience?
Yeah, I mean, I know that I I know. First of all, I'm excited. I don't think it. I mean, I know for a fact there hasn't been this much time ever passing between me playing a show, and it's something, you know, it's something that we need to. As much as like people love going to concerts, there's a symbiotic relationship there. You know, that feedback loop we were talking about, and I also think that, you know, from a audience perspective, you know, like I think a lot of people took a lot of the cool things that we can do for granted, and you know, music in the last, well, really always, but you know, with streaming and the way that everything's changing, you know, music has started to get treated as like a commodity instead of like a luxury. You know what I mean? Where like, you know, I remember when I was younger, you know, trying to get gigs in New York and, you know, negotiating over pay, and it's like, dude, like, you can't. I'm not gonna go insult the guys that I really respect as musicians and say that you guys are gonna offer us $50 to play for 3 hours. If you want to do that, just plug in an iPod and play Spotify. And the bar owner or the club owner would always be like, well, no, our thing is live music. And I was like, well, then you got to pay for it, man. And I feel like when it all got ripped away, everyone kind of opened their eyes and went, oh, wow, I cannot wait to go to a concert. Yeah. So I feel like all the shows are going to be like totally insane. I'm super excited for it. I'm also like, I think by this point, you know, going like, all right, 2 weeks, everybody. All right, another 3 weeks. All right. I've kind of like set myself up for disappointment a few times out. I mean, I know and I hope that nothing happens where this is like the real return for us. But yeah, I'm just taking it as it comes, man. And I know that those, you know, when we do get back on stage, that it's going to be a crazy shared group experience with the people in attendance there, because, you know, like I said, we all got hosed on this one, you know, in terms of like getting and going to have these experiences with other people that are way more important than they're given credit to, you know.
Mm-hmm, totally. I like to say that like me, you know, we mentioned like fangirling over like your heroes and like celebrities and stuff. Me on the outside looking in at you, like I fangirl over someone I consider a good buddy of mine, because like it's just like every time I see something that you guys are doing, I'm like, this is so fucking great. I'm so happy for this kid. Like your music video comes out, I'm like, fucking Johnny's on fucking YouTube. He's in a music video, and like all these things that I get to see as your friend, as your supporter, as someone who cares about you, is such a fucking awesome experience. Like from the outside looking in, and I'm like very, very, very amped up for you guys to like hit the road and start crushing it again, because I knew you guys were just so close to the cusp of like hugeness that like I'm ready for that to be your next 12, 24 and years of your life. Yeah. So I like to spend like the last bit of each of my podcasts just asking like some generalized questions about shit, and just getting like an idea of like who John Baab is as a human being. So my first question is, what's your favorite?
Like a rapid fire round?
Yeah, rapid fire. I mean, some are a little deep, but like, you know, some are like, for instance, what's your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book. I'm thinking not because I got to think of a title, but because there's so many titles, I promise. There's this book I read called Merle's Door some years ago. I still have a copy of it, and I will always have a copy of it everywhere. And it's a book about a a man who's hiking, and this dog finds him. You know, sometimes they say like, your animal chooses you, and this golden retriever just would not stop following him around. And he, you know, they'd go on hikes. The dog would just kind of do his thing, go and come. And one of those stories where like the guy finds out like when the dog leaves, like he goes and visits everyone in the town and like stuff like that. And it's a really, really wonderful story about companionship and just learning lessons through, you know, an animal, which I think that's partially why they're here, is to teach us some stuff, you know.
I like that.
That was a great one. And then also there's another book called there's a trilogy of them. I'm trying to think of each name. Okay, there's one, it's all by the same author. One is called Ego is the Enemy. My favorite one of the three is called The Obstacle is the Way. It is they're books essentially about stoicism, and they talk about, you know, responding to things rather than reacting to them, because we get drugged by our own hormones and we react and we lash out or whatever, or we take things personally. And it's a book that really helped me, and it's a book that I've gifted to a few people since I was recommended it. The Obstacle is the Way. I mean, the you know, the title is pretty self-explanatory about what it kind of talks about, but it's a really interesting book that kind of pulls you back from your, and the other one, the ego is the enemy. They kind of go hand in hand. Kind of pulls you out of your self-righteousness and brings you back down to earth, you know.
I think I'm going to add those to my Amazon cart the second we hang up. I could use that for sure.
I highly recommend them. They're really great books.
What is your favorite movie?
Forrest Gump.
Fuck yeah, great choice. Love that film. Great movie.
I mean, I'm very biased, obviously, but I think it's the best of all time. Close second, The Birdcage.
Ooh, I mean, Robin Williams, the OG. I mean, just I would say without question, the funniest human being that ever existed. He had
Dude, him and Nathan Lane together in that movie is just a riot, man.
Yeah.
And who's the senator? It's Gene Hackman, right?
Yeah. Good film. Good movie. What's your favorite food?
I'm a pretty equal opportunity food eater. I like trying a lot of things. I like really spicy things. It just kind of depends on my mood. Yeah, that's not a good answer, but yeah, I'm pretty easy on that. I'm not a picky eater.
All right, fair enough. Do you believe in an afterlife?
You mean one after this one too?
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, I don't necessarily subscribe to any anything that has any sort of doctrine on it, but I do think that,
Ditto.
you know, I do think that we all, you know, if I want to subscribe to the doctrine of the Big Bang Theory, that, you know, two really super dense particles collided and exploded and we're living in the aftermath of that explosion, then I think that we're going to keep living in the aftermath of that explosion even after we're gone on this blip. You know, we're all stardust. Well, from dust we come, to dust we shall return, kind of thing, you know?
I like that. That's a good perspective.
I don't subscribe to any doctrines. I'm just like quoting the Bible and shit.
Well, I mean, we were all raised a certain way. That's completely understandable. Are you happy?
Yeah.
Good.
It took me a long time to realize what happiness actually was, because it doesn't mean that you don't have tough days, you know? I think for me, it's more about, am I happy with the way I carry myself? Am I happy with the way I treat people? And I think everything else kind of falls into place after that, because, you know, good things can happen to bad people, man. And I mean, bad things can happen to good people is probably what I meant more. But, you know, as long as you're steadfast in your approach, you know, and you do the work, you know, on that journey, like I think, you know, in the end, it'll all work out. And if it's not working out, it's not the end. So there have been times where I'm just like, I'm maybe not where I wanted to be in life, but I still found happiness in the sense where I was confident in that I was doing everything I could and I was doing the right thing. And I was like, hey man, maybe it'll work out. Maybe it won't, you know, like sometimes, you know, obviously I was a baseball player, so a baseball reference, but I mean, there are times where you hit a ball on the screws and a screaming line drive and it's right at somebody. Like,
Hmm.
you didn't do anything. Yeah, would you rather have gotten a hit? Sure, but like, you did everything you could, and I think that's where happiness kind of lives,
Yeah,
for me.
totally. I couldn't agree with that more. What's your biggest fear?
I not knowing what to say, I guess. No, I don't know, man. I think it's important to have a healthy relationship with fear.
I do too.
If I had to,
I've only started feeling that way as I've gotten older. Like I feel like the
yeah,
things that I'm afraid of, like putting myself out there, dying, like all these things that like I would like chalk up as a fear, have been immense motivators lately. But like in my mid 20s, like or early 20s, like turtle shelled me.
right. Yeah, I think if I had to say my biggest fear, it's probably almost getting there, but not quite.
Mm.
Like getting this far and then just whether it's a fade out or a burnout, whatever they call it. But that would have to be my biggest. But I really just I try to really sit with those things because, and that's why I think I got so into blues music when I was younger. Is like, you know, obviously when people think of blues music, they think of like sad songs, sad dude on a porch who's poor, who doesn't have money, or like whatever it is. And to me, it was always more about embracing the trouble in your life, right? Like not just complaining about it or crying about it, but actually being like, hey, this is happening to me, and I'm gonna handle it right now. I'm gonna go look at it in the eye, shake its hand, and say, have a nice journey. You know what I mean? And you always hear about people like facing their fears, like going skydiving if they're afraid of heights and whatever that is. And I think if you if you hold things off long enough, you eventually have to really break that fear. And I just always try to just keep them close, because like you said, it could be a motivator, it could be something like that makes you not do something stupid. If you're afraid of dying, maybe you shouldn't like be like climbing mountains without any safety. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that kind of thing.
totally.
But yeah, I think that's what I got there.
What's the best piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
Wow, a great question. Well, not in the deepest way, but the best advice that I was given that I took and happened to work out for me was a buddy of mine, this guy named Jeff Mackerlin. He's a ridiculous guitar player. I have two. I got two for you. The advice he gave me when I was like, I just dropped out of college. Um, he and I was just trying to, start my music career, not even just like try to amplify it. But he told me just hang out, man. And I was like, what? That doesn't sound like it's gonna work. But he's like, no, like go to other people's shows. After your gig, if there's a spot where all the musicians are hanging, go there. Go to the jam sessions, go to all those things so people see it's almost like an out of sight, out of mind thing. If
Mm.
people see your face, they're more likely to call you for a gig, or you're more likely to talk about, you know, you're more likely to talk about music and maybe meet up and kind of build those connections and network. But, the way he phrased it, just hang out, hang out a lot instead of being like, oh, go out and network with everybody, because then it turns into this unorganic mechanical force thing where we've all been out and there's a guy thrusting his business card. How many business cards can you pass out? And I think that's like an exciting thing when you're younger, but it really doesn't convert, I don't think, very often, unless there's a real genuine exchange there first. You know what
Hmm.
I mean?
Totally.
Because dude, I used to hold business cards and never look at them ever again, and I would have a stack, and why would I pull this guy out instead of this guy? It was because we hung out.
Hmm.
uh, the other piece of advice that I got that was actually probably the most impactful and on a deep level was And I'm paraphrasing. It's a little bit long. I'm trying to remember. It was, in your experience of freedom, you will swing on a pendulum between fantasy and fear. And neither the experience of the fantasy nor the experience of the fear will be as powerful as the swing itself.
Damn.
So it took me a minute to unpack that and fully understand it, but essentially what it's saying is like, whether you're living your fantasy or your worst fear, it's only the change of the swing of that pendulum that is really the impactful part. You know, that's why you see a lot of people. I don't want to, you know, step on any toes with this one. I hope he doesn't hear it and come kick my ass when I'm somebody someday. But like, you know, you see that with like maybe like a Conor McGregor who, you know, was just an animal, you know, just highly motivated, and then he got to the pinnacle of where he could get to. Maybe got a little bit complacent, but he got to whatever everyone was always working so hard for. But then what happened? Kind of lost his fire a little bit. It's that journey up there, you know, that swing from one to the other, that's really going to be the most impactful thing and powerful thing that you have, you know. Dude,
I fucking love that. I like that a lot. I'm writing that down as you say it. That's a good one. That is like, you know, is the juice worth the squeeze? The journey to the place is more impactful, more important than when like you get to the destination, kind of deal. And, yeah, fuck, I love that. That's a good one. All right, my last question is, what's one recommendation you have for everyone listening here today? Something that you've consumed lately. Could be a TV show, a book you read, a movie, a podcast, anything. Literally music, anything. Something that you've consumed lately that you loved, that you want everyone to check out.
There's a show on Netflix that just came out with season 2 called I Think You Should Leave, with Tim Robinson. It is one of the funniest sketch comedy shows I've ever seen, and I don't think it takes a particular sense of humor to think that it's just like awkwardly hilarious. But yeah, that would be one thing. The other thing would be, and a little self-plug here, y'all should check out the Ghost Hound's new single, Between Me and the Devil. I say it like that because people always think I'm saying Ghost Town, but it's hounds like the dog,
yes.
like a hound.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to shamelessly plug you regardless, you know, if you had you not.
I don't need any prompt for that, baby, you know.
You've been doing this too long, my friend, too long. Johnny, dude, thank you so much for hopping on today. I had such a great time chatting with you as always. You know, it's just such a joy to see you doing the shit that you're doing, and I truly I'm so happy for all the shit that you got coming down on the pipeline, and you know, you got a big supporter in me and you, and I'm cheering you guys on big time.
Johnny, I appreciate you so much, man. Thank you for having me on, and you know, we'll be, you know, stay tuned. We'll probably be announcing some show stuff, you know, coming up. Just trying to, you know, get everything in the works, everything finalized. But yeah, we'll definitely see you at a show sometime, man.
Awesome, sounds good, buddy. Take care.